Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Debbie De Grote here, and I have a very special guest with us today, Jacqueline Smith. And Jacqueline will introduce herself in just a moment. I've known her for many years. She is fabulous in her business, how she leads her team. And we've been having a lot of fun lately here at Forward, bringing forward to you some special guests, which have unique expertise in different segments of the market. So I love it. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it straight from the street. So as we go today, feel free, type in your questions in the chat box. If Jacqueline hasn't covered something in her slides, we'll be sure to save some time at the end. And then I'm going to monitor the chat just to help her out here. And we're going to be talking about tips to get your buyer's offers accepted. I do know that in certain markets, you are seeing some slowdown in certain price points. So it might not be as difficult, but in most markets, that bread and butter price range, there is still some pretty significant competition. So we're going to talk about that today. And Jacqueline, I think you have a bio there. So if you want
to, I have one for you, but I think a lot of people know who you are.
So Debbie De Grote, CEO, co-founder of Forward Coaching. And, you know, Jacqueline, I don't know if you and I talked about this, but in my career, about 50% of my business always was buyers. Mm-hmm. And I was doing buyer agreements back before they were required or very many people in the country were doing them. Your team's been doing it for a long time, though, right?
Yeah.
This is not new to them.
No, we've been doing them as well because I was brought up that way in real estate to use them. And so it wasn't a big shift for us either. I'm the CEO of Evergreen Real Estate Partners. We're here in Vancouver, Washington. So we actually service all of Southwest Washington and the Portland metro area, Portland, Oregon. I've been doing real estate for 10 years. And so over 2,000 transactions closed at this point. I just saw the other day. And I closed 52 my very first year. So that was in 2015. I love coaching agents. And like Debbie said, in our market, we've definitely seen a shift. The shift happened for us in May of 2022. I always say it was like this one weekend where the lights went off. So we've adjusted well, and we're seeing actually, like you said, in certain price points in certain areas, that the competition is still there. And I almost feel like since it's not happening on all of our deals, that we're a little out of practice. Like we were getting it down in 2021, right? But now we may not be setting the right expectations with buyers. So then when we get into these multiple offer situations, things are kind of falling apart for us a little bit. So I noticed it recently on a couple of the listings that I had that were really competitive, and I was fielding a lot of calls. And so I'm just going to share from a listing agent perspective, more so how to help your buyers as a buyer's agent.
Right. How to wow and win.
Yes.
Really rapport also with that listing agent, right?
Absolutely.
But I want to stop for a second as something you said that I think is important.
Okay.
We can often, because I've been through so many market cycles, and it was easy to get a little bit lax and feel a little bit more comfortable that, my buyer doesn't have to go in at full asking, or, we can rock and roll with some of this and be a little looser. And sure enough, that is the time that there are multiple bids on that property. So I just got used to saying to buyers, you are a very savvy shopper and you've picked a great home. Odds are someone else may want that home as well. We never know until the last minute, and we don't want to lose because we did not put our best foot forward. And I think that's, just good no matter what the market, to not be, what would be the word, almost like disrespectful in a way of how much that buyer likes that home. oh, well, I can go sell them something else. Yeah, but what if that was really the home they wanted and we didn't set the stage properly for them?
Yeah, it's almost like we let our guard down, right?
Right.
And we lose out. So we don't want to lose out for our buyers. So obviously, I mean, I think most of us at this point understand the importance of the consultation so that we can really educate our buyers and make sure that they understand, like you said, Debbie, that we're in a very nuanced market, I would say right now. So obviously we're going to look at days on market as their agent. And yeah, if something's sitting for a long time, there might be more room there. But when something is hot and fresh and it's a listing that's in a desirable area and it's well presented, that's what we're seeing is they're flying off the shelf. And then the other ones that we're seeing are just these fixers that they're good deals. And, someone could get in with some sweat equity, these young buyers who are coming in and they're scraping everything together just to, own a home. Those ones are also for us very hot listings. So conducting a consultation, making sure that your clients are aware of what the market is doing and then aware of, your process so that they're going to be informed along the way, I think is just kind of the foundational piece. It's a non-negotiable at this point. Like you said, we're forced to use the buyer brokerage services agreement. That's what we call it in Washington. But are we doing a flawless consultation where we have a systematic way of making sure that our buyers are educated?
And my thought on that was always first, do the deep dive into what they are dreaming of and looking for, which is a perfect setup for your slide here, because I think in that initial intake of what they want, we could be very judgmental and say, well, you're not going to get a 5-bedroom at that price, or that area's, no, just listen, absorb, ask the questions, educate them about your services and process, talk to them a little bit about the nuances of the market, get them signed on the dotted line. And now that they've chosen you, they're much more likely to listen, I think, when you really start to dig in on the nitty gritty.
Absolutely. And with that sort of thing, I've always loved just in the consultation, pulling up, my MLS, and I'll just start plugging in search criteria right then and there. And so I usually encourage them to start, wide if they have maybe something that I feel like is a little unrealistic. I'll let's just keep it open. And then I'll drill down and drill down and drill down so that they can see, okay, there are options. But the more, I restrict my terms, my search criteria, the less there are. And so I found just showing them is much better than telling them, because I think sometimes they might not believe us. They might think some other agent has like some secret listings or something, or that there's some other portal, and so I like showing them.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I actually conducted focus groups. Now, this is going back quite a few years ago with buyers. A broker asked me to do this, and there were many, many groups we met with. There was one very consistent thing that came up across the groups, and that was that real estate agents, in their mind, they believed withheld good properties from them.
Wow.
Said, tell me how, why you think that. Well, because we'll drive around and we see all these signs, but then the agent tells me there's nothing matching me. And I said, well, why would you think they would withhold them? What would be their purpose? And their answer was almost always the same, so that we could go buy all the good ones, right?
Oh my gosh.
So there is a level of skepticism. Part of it is just they don't want to accept what they're looking for is not in their range. And that was my solution too. Sit right with them at the computer, run those searches, and with them say, okay, well, since we're not finding what you want, now would you consider 4-bedroom if the bedrooms were, okay, let's try that. Now,
Yeah.
I know you want Newport Beach, but would you also look in Huntington Beach or Fountain Valley? And so I think allowing them to be part of that makes them move forward much more quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing I think is so, so, so important is showing them the long-term financial benefits of home ownership. So we use the Place Calculator. So you can go on to your app store and download the Place Mortgage Calculator. And I, again, walk them through that right in the consultation as well, because it can be overwhelming right now, especially with rates, on, I guess, subjectively, right, on the high side, but and affordability being a little bit of a challenge, at least in our area. And so for them to see that this does feel a little scary, but every year I'm really building wealth for my family and building my net worth and paying down my principal. So it's like a forced savings account, and the tax savings. And so I like to show them that, because a lot of them are nervous, well, what if the market does go down? And I show them 3 financial benefits, and one of them is appreciation. But let's say it does go down for a few years. You still have 2 others, right? You still have your principal reduction and your tax benefits. And over the long term, we know that in real estate, appreciation always goes up. It may dip down here and there, but over the long term, it's averaging, over 4% per year nationally. So I think showing them that helps them as well feel like they're making a confident, financial decision. And then if things get a little hairy, throughout the transaction, I bring them back to that and help them remember, this is a long-term financial benefit for your family. It might cause some short-term discomfort, but long-term, you're doing the right thing.
Well, and you can control your cost of housing, which when you rent, you don't really have that control. And I think a great question is ask them, how long do they plan to live in the home? Well, I plan to be there 15 years. Okay, well, let's look back 15 years ago. What did this home sell for? And there were ups and downs, but ultimately, most people build most of their wealth by investing in real estate. So I think it's great to show them more than one reason. It's not just appreciation, because quite frankly, Jacqueline, if you think about it this way, what if houses never appreciated at all? We bought them with the goal of paying it off and having a home we owned free and clear for the rest of our life, right? We just get so caught up in that appreciation conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. People try and treat it like the stock market a little bit, and timing the market, and that doesn't really work out. So this is the Place Mortgage Calculator, just a snapshot of it. And then just showing them this average net worth of a renter versus a homeowner. It's really powerful, when you walk someone that doesn't own a home through this. I do this all the time with people. I mean, even friends, if I'm out for dinner and they don't own a home, like I just can't wait to show them this, because I think it's so powerful to see. Most people are not saving, in this example that's on the screen, $21,000 in 1 year, right? Most people that are renting a lot of the people I know anyways, they're just living like paycheck to paycheck, month to month. They're not really adding significant savings or net worth until they.
John is asking, I know you're part of Place, so you have this calculator. Most of our people here are not part of Place. They can't access this, right?
Actually, no. Anyone can go to the App Store and download it. We have our clients download it.
Okay, so how to give them the login?
Yep, go to so I don't know for Android, because I'm not an Android. I'm an iPhone. You just go to the App Store and search Place Mortgage Calculator, and you will find it.
Sarah said she just downloaded it. So awesome.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay.
Important to mention, and you might be mentioning this soon. Have a great lender partner, right?
Yes.
Because they're your, backup support in helping someone understand all of this and help helping to do some of the heavy lifting.
Absolutely. This is a worksheet that I use. It's in our buyer consultation packet. So it's kind of my reminder so I don't forget to explain, right, the financial benefits of home ownership. And it walks them through essentially what the calculator will walk them through. So in that calculator, you can do a mortgage payment calculator, or you can calculate the benefits of home ownership. So that's the difference with that calculator over just any other mortgage calculator. Is most of the other ones, they're just, helping you calculate the payment. I want them to calculate the financial gain that they're going to have from home ownership every year. So if you don't have this, get the calculator. And if you want this, certainly, I think we can probably get this out to everyone, a screenshot of this, and you could duplicate it or create your own version if you want it in your consultations.
Well, and what we'll do is we're going to send them a copy of this recording.
Okay.
Go back through and extract.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Yep. So here's what you were just saying, Debbie. It's important to have a quality lender who can be your partner, right? And so I think this is really important because especially if they end up being in a multiple offer situation, let's say they don't get their offer accepted and they get really disappointed and frustrated, and they're pre-approved with, John Smith with ABC Mortgage, and he doesn't know who you are. He doesn't care about who you are. And he might have another realtor partner, right? This John Smith guy. And he reaches out to the buyers and he's like, did you get your offer accepted? And they say, no, like, we're really frustrated. And, we're thinking about maybe we need a different realtor. Your lender partner is going to edify you and help, make sure that they understand that it's not you, right? And any other person, you just don't know what they're going to say. Hopefully they don't steer them away from you, but they could. So I like having someone that I trust, that I know is going to do a good job, that's also in my corner, and that I trust that they've reviewed everything, that my clients are actually pre-approved and not just self-approved by whatever they punch in online. And then also, I want them to have a reputation in my community and with the local agents here, because I want them to call that agent and, sell them on my buyers. So usually people that you get online or people that you don't know that are in some other state, like they may or may not do that. Even if they're willing to call, none of the agents know who they are, right? And that can deter you from getting your offer accepted. Local data. So I think right now it's so important to go over this because our buyers are getting all of their information, depending on their age bracket, on TikTok, the news, and it is not local data. So we are all in different markets and experiencing different situations, right, because of the market that we're in. And so they're just getting all of that national data, and we want to make sure that they understand what's going on locally. It could be very different from what they're hearing on the news. So make sure you're bringing data to those consultations and reviewing it with them, even if they're not data people, right? It's so important to back up what you're saying with data.
I just typed in the chat box a tool that I know you use, Area Pro. Mm-hmm. It is a product, so it's up to you guys whether you're interested in, signing up for it or not. I think it's month to month. It's super affordable, and it's amazing because it can give you so much amazing data in a second. And then with ChatGPT, it even writes for you a script on how to explain that data to a buyer or how to explain it to a seller.
Yeah.
The kind of data that used to would have taken us hours to put together for a prospect, and now it takes like a couple of minutes. So it's pretty cool. You might want to check it out and do a demo.
It's really cool. I lead a team of agents, and I I know that we're all like this, right? Like there's some of us that love data. We understand it, we can dissect it and interpret it, and we can explain it to people. And then I have agents that they're just like, they gloss over. They don't want to, right? And so it's intimidating. And I've been so excited with Area Pro because those agents that formerly were like, I'm not a numbers person or I'm not a data person, and they tend to shy away from those conversations. It's really helped them build confidence and, yeah, like you said, know how to explain it to their clients. So it's been really helpful. So if that's you, if you're not a numbers person and you kind of get intimidated by data, it might be worth the investment for you for sure. Okay. So let them know things like how quickly homes are selling, whether they should expect multiple offers. And I think right now that's harder to predict for us. Like in 2020 and 2021, our consultations were very much like, this is going to be a multiple offer situation. Like we're going to war, and you're going to have to sign, your firstborn child away to get a house. Now, how do we set that expectation when there's homes that are sitting for a very long time in our market, and then there's homes that are flying off the shelf? So it's just a conversation. So we help them understand that, I mean, the way a home is received by the market, it's definitely dependent on the price, how it's priced and positioned in the market, and then how it's presented. So we could have, two homes in the same neighborhood. One's priced on the high side and it's going to sit for a while. One's priced more aggressively. It's going to attract multiple offers. So that's where we can really add value for our clients, is by helping them navigate this market, because it does require expertise. It does require someone that's reviewing the listings that are coming on and pending and understanding that data we were talking about. So I think this is such a really cool time for agents to shine for their buyers and really help them navigate a kind of a nuanced market, like I said earlier.
A little scripting that I used to always use with my buyers is, tell me, what is the price you're willing to pay to hopefully ensure someone does not take your home away, right? And then if they said whatever number they said, I'd say, okay, that's fine. We can go in at that. If they were to come back with a counter offer, what would you do? Well, I would go another 20, another 20,000. Okay. Would you prefer to go in with your best foot forward? Then if we do not get accepted, we'll know we did our best, right? Because I had no problems encouraging them to go where they were comfortable versus losing the house, right? Because that house might be hard to replace. I'm also very careful about having a listing agent tell me, oh, I think a seller will take X number, and then going and telling the buyer that, and then the seller won't take X number. So I prefer just to say the agent seems to feel the seller is open to offers. And I think that's safer than telling them a seller will take X when they actually may not. That might be something the agent told you to get you to write. And then one last thought, when we see a price adjustment, so a buyer might look at it and say, oh, it's been 45 days on the market. Yes, that is correct. However, the price adjustment just occurred yesterday. So therefore, we don't know what kind of frenzy of activity that might potentially spark, right? Which is something to remind them of too.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing it here on our team. We take a lot of listings, and the same thing, like you said, we might be a little touch high and then we adjust the price. We've actually seen it even when we didn't adjust the price. Something happens with rates, 1 week, and then suddenly we have 3 offers, when it had been sitting for a few weeks, which is a long time, to still get multiple offers in our market. So you never know with rates. I mean, they're kind of fluctuating a lot right now, and that's driving a lot of activity with buyers. Same thing just with overall sentiment. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so depending on what they watched on the news that week, I mean, they might be excited or a little freaked out, so it's always shifting.
And My Area Pro is not an app. It is actually a company, a product. So if you Google Area Pro, it will come right up and you can ask them to do a little consult for you.
Yeah. I liked this kind of thought process, encouraging our clients, and I think this is good even in situations that are not multiple offer as well, to think of the list price like an opening bid at an auction, right? So it's a starting point, and we're going to factor in all the data, and I'm going to call the listing agent and try to get an idea of activity, showings and things like that, so I can kind of guide them on where I think it might land. Yeah.
And I think areas that are popular, or you mentioned a fixer. Sometimes they're those very old-fashioned. They're in good condition, but they're super old-fashioned, and the granny decor is turning off the buyers.
Yeah.
Right? And if they can see past that and maybe have a little bit better runway of negotiation.
Yeah, those ugly ducklings, sometimes those are the hot ones, right? Okay, so you talked about your scripting. So what's the very most you're willing to pay if the home is ideal? I really like to ask too, if they say a certain price, let's say they want to go in at this price, your buyers, I'll ask, okay, let's just say we don't get our offer accepted. They choose another offer, and then we're able to find out when it closes, it went for 5,000 more or 10,000 more, right? And now for our average price point here is 500. So for you in California, you might be talking in bigger increments there, but I'll ask my buyer that. And I just say simply, I'm not trying to coerce you. I'm trying to avoid you from having a broken heart. So would you be disappointed if you found out it went for 5 or 10 more than what you offered? And I have them think about that. And if they say, yeah, then I suggest that we might want to go up. If they say no, like I wouldn't want it for more, I'm not going to be upset. Well, then great, let's put the offer in, right? So I do try to help them figure out where that heartbreak would end, right? So that they know what they're really willing to pay.
So what I haven't heard you say, though, is it doesn't sound like you tell them this is the number you should offer, because there's a lot of danger in that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be really leery, kind of like you were saying, even sharing what the listing agent says the seller will accept. You just don't know, right? And so it's not about what I think the home is worth. Right? It's not about, it's what is it worth to you? Because there's some properties that I've shown that, I mean, I could have gotten them for 50,000 less and I wouldn't have wanted it, right? And then there's other properties like the house that we live in now. We did go over asking for it, and I would have probably went a little higher even. And so beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so I try to avoid that. I show them data. I want them to feel like they understand. Like I'll show them some recent sales. And sometimes that's not even an option either. And it's really like, what do you feel good about paying for this house? And it's an emotional decision sometimes. So
I had a conversation with an agent that showed a property that was 8 million, and he recommended that it wasn't worth more than 7.5, and that's what they should offer.
Okay.
They made the 7.5 and they lost it to a buyer that paid 8 million. And they promptly fired the agent and said, we would have been happy. We wanted the home. We would have paid fair full asking. You gave us bad advice. So be very careful.
Yeah.
Asking, don't you use an escalation clause rather than jumping to their highest and best number?
Yeah. Some sellers some listing agents are not accepting escalation clauses here. I don't know if it's like that in California, but it's not always an option. And I personally, as the listing agent, if I have someone with an escalation and I have someone that is coming in strong, I mean, that does speak volumes to me as a listing agent, and I'll share that with the seller. So I have mixed feelings about escalation clauses.
A lot of agents do. A lot of listing agents do.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously, if needed, encourage them to be more flexible in areas and search criteria. We talked about that at the consultation. Prep them for negotiations so they're able to react quickly and logically. So one of the things I like to do is talk about the terms that can strengthen an offer in the consultation in advance. So I want to at least have a conversation about certain things when their emotions are not running high and they're like in love with the house and we have to get an offer in before a deadline tonight at 9 or whatever it is. I want to at least have explain some things, right? The terms that we can use, we can offer rent backs to the seller, so time after closing in the house. We can offer, there's things you can waive if they're really into it, and depending on the buyer and the property, waiving inspections or waiving certain contingencies. So those are really important decisions, and I think it's important that we go through all of that with them when things are calm. Yeah.
When you're going through these things with them up front, as opposed to they love the house, are you just telling them those things because you think you can sell it to them?
Yeah.
No, we started in the beginning with that proper education. Now we need to make our decisions based on this particular home and situation.
Absolutely. Now, as an example, my husband's a contractor, and this house that we bought, I don't know what could have come up, right, on an inspection that would have caused us to not buy it. It was right by the lake. It's the only house by this lake. I loved the location. And as far as I was concerned, we're buying this house. So we were in a competitive situation. We were actually doing a loan and we were competing against a cash buyer. And we waived our inspection. So I don't recommend this for very many buyers, right? Unless they're kind of in that same situation, like they're really handy and they're comfortable with it. But we did waive it. Now there would have been, 50 other houses, I would not have waived my inspection. So the terms, it's important that they know about them, and they're not deciding in the consultation necessarily, right, what they're going to do. That will be dependent on the property and how much they love the house, but at least a little bit where their comfort level is, and they're educated on the pros and cons before they're, like you said, in love, and they don't feel coerced at that time. Okay. Oh, we talked about this, right, already. So beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Be careful about sharing your opinion. And then you might want to counsel them to have extra cash on hand in the event of a low appraisal. So if things are going above that opening bid that we talked about, right, they're going above the list price, then having some extra cash on hand for low appraisal is important. We have actually been seeing in our market low appraisals. I don't know about you guys down there.
It's all over. And the way I've always explained it, appraisal is this is a person that really, truly, if you ultimately think about it, is representing the bank.
Right.
Alone, because the bank it owns more of the property than you do in a way, right?
True.
And so they're going to be conservative. They're human, which means they can make errors. And they are working off of data that's a few months old and not necessarily keeping pace with the current market. So you have to decide if the appraisal comes in low. We can certainly try to negotiate with that owner. And if they say no, then you're going to make the decision, do I walk from this home, or do I have this extra cash and I go ahead and I close the deal, which in most cases, most of the buyers, if they had the extra cash, they would do it, right? If it's a they love.
Absolutely. Not everyone does. So if they do, I mean, I love the way that you framed the appraisal. I think that's really good. Everyone should write that down. And then, yeah, you might have to purchase a home in as-is condition. It doesn't mean here, at least in Washington, that you have to waive your inspection, but some sellers may be expecting they're not going to do any repairs, right? So just to have that conversation again up front, so that if they encounter a home they love and the seller's like, this is it, that they're not, it's the first time they've ever heard of this. So
That's why it's great to talk about it in the consultation.
Yeah.
Then when situations come up, I always think of it as just the facts. Don't bring drama to them. Let's say that unfortunately the listing agent is not very nice and they're rather rude and even unprofessional, and the seller is not very nice. Okay, but what good does that do to come back to your buyer and talk about how these two are such incredible jerks? Instead, just come back to the buyer and say, well, based on the market for this price point, the popularity of this neighborhood, and the price they're willing to accept from you, they are only going to sell it in as-is condition. That's the facts. We don't need to give all the drama, right? Because all that will do is upset them, stress them out, and get a battle of egos going, which goes.
Yeah, then they get extra frustrated, and usually that doesn't lead anywhere well. And then the other one, consider giving the seller more time to move out as an incentive. We just negotiated that on one of our deals in lieu of, credits. So that's something, I mean, I guess it's not free, right? Because it's time in the house, but it's something that you can offer that's not coming out of pocket necessarily. And then, this is important. I think when we meet with buyers, like especially now with these buyer brokerages agreements, like we've had a lot of talks on the team about this because we were just signing all these buyers and, they weren't going anywhere. So just like you wouldn't take a wildly overpriced listing, right? If the seller is just totally unreasonable and won't face reality, you really need to decide if after your consultation and all this education, like depending on what they're looking for and what they're willing to pay and do for a property, it may or may not be worth your time. So again, it's not just them interviewing us, it's us interviewing them to make sure that we are a good fit. And depending on your goals and your market, some may not be, right?
So for an example, if you're at a meeting, a consultation, and they say, well, I want you to know, I'm going to offer 15% below asking on every property, no matter what the property might be. Or they're saying things that make you concerned.
Yeah.
Even in the process of working with them, they're behaving in ways that are stopping them from succeeding. I always feel that as a professional, we owe it to them to, without emotion, again, without judgment or drama, just explain why that scenario they're setting up for themselves is not going to have a successful outcome. And Mr. Buyer, as much as I would love to help you, I would rather turn you down today than let you down tomorrow. And I respect you enough to tell you the truth. So if we can't craft a better approach together, then we should not work together. I cannot accept you as, as a project because I don't feel it will have a successful outcome. So I think we need to be that direct.
Yes. Yeah, I love that script. I'd rather turn you down today than let you down tomorrow. I'm going to add that to mine. So that's so important. I've seen agents, they're just running around ragged for these buyers that they're never going to get something under contract unless some major miracle were to happen, or they're looking for something that really just doesn't exist. And, it's our job to tell them that, right?
I think at every 2-week marker, you're at in that process. And that's a good time to go back and say, nothing is matching, nothing is coming up. Let's examine this criteria. What changes can we make? I feel like that's the difference between a sales professional and an order taker. An order taker is like, okay, you want that? We'll just see if we can find it.
Yep.
A sales professional really takes them by the hand and consults with them on options.
That's really good. Yeah. Okay. So let's go on to winning the negotiations. Okay. So we've kind of talked through all the setup. Now we're going to talk through negotiations. So negotiations begin before you submit the offer. And I think a lot of real estate agents, at least in our market, that call me, I don't think they realize this, right? So we're going to talk through some things not to do and then some things to do. So number one, I know this is a big peeve for a lot of agents. Read the instructions. Like, we have public remarks here in our MLS and private remarks. I find maybe it's because I'm a high D on the disc profile. When I get a phone call from someone and they are asking me the questions that are literally in all caps in my in my instructions, like, you're not starting off on a good foot. So read the remarks. And the other thing is calling with this long laundry list of questions before you've even showed the house. Like, I don't know why a lot of it matters at this point. I mean, there's certain things that might matter because maybe you wouldn't go show it, but just sometimes it's like, kind of get to the point and maybe just go show the house. Right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. So this is what I was talking about, like calling to ask, like, is it worth showing? Especially in the competitive market. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what, I don't know what your buyers are looking for. I mean, I'm not their agent. I don't know if it's worth showing, right? Is it worth writing an offer? I don't know. What are they going to offer? I don't know how to guide you as the listing agent when I get these questions, and I get them a lot. So I put them in here because I find I get them every time I have a hot listing, and it's really challenging to even answer that question. So don't ask those vague kind of questions. Calling without a clear question or purpose and just this sort of meandering. You have to remember that the listing agent, if a property is competitive, the phone is ringing off the hook. Right? So I might come out of a meeting with a client or something, and I'll have, 15 other calls to call back. I've got a long list of texts. I mean, I'm getting consumer calls and agent calls. So just remember that you are trying to make a good impression on this. Your clients want to write an offer. And so you don't want to waste people's time and just sort of meander through. This might be your only client, but they've got like another hour and a half of calls to return after this. So let's kind of get to it, and then just fishing for information. When I don't have permission from my seller to divulge details of the offers that we've received thus far, I can't tell you. So that's where you're going to have to rely on the conversations and the consultation that you've had with your clients and some of the scripts that Debbie shared today to guide your clients, because we don't always have permission to release that information to people that are calling us. We're not trying to be rude as the listing agent. We're not trying to be unhelpful. We just legally have obligations to our seller.
So Anne has a question.
Mm-hmm.
When the buyer agent wants to present in person with the seller agent. Now, what I don't understand, Anna, maybe you can elaborate, where you say this is a law, but many agents push back. I'm not aware that there is a law that says you have to let the buyer agent present to the seller. I don't know about that, Jacqueline. I know that for the first 15 years of my career, that's how it was done. Mm-hmm. And I personally love that as a buyer agent, mm-hmm. because I got to plead my case. I find that most of the time the listing agent is not going to let you present to their seller. However, if you can build a great relationship with a listing agent and the negotiation is really a tough one, and the agent trusts you, you might be able to say, maybe if we could get on together on a Zoom, or I can come to your office and then I can leave and let you finish. Like, there are times where you might be able to talk with that agent, but I don't see that happening much in the country. Do you?
I mean, I haven't, I've only been in the business since 2014. And so I've never had anyone want to present it in person. So I can't really speak to it.
And then it could be a Virginia law. However, we do coach agents in Virginia, and they don't, I've not heard that. So it might just be that they have the right to ask, but the seller has the right to decline. I think that could, but I would say, again, if you push to a point with the listing agent where you break rapport and break relationship, it's probably going to create a problem for you down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, every state's different, so I don't really know, but we haven't had that here. Okay, so acting like your buyer's interest should influence your pricing or decisions. So I think it's really important to share that your buyers love the property and they're very interested. I mean, I think all of the people writing offers are. So that doesn't really differentiate you. What would differentiate you more than just going on and on about how much they love the house and really want it is what are the things you've done as a buyer's agent to prepare your buyer for negotiations in a competitive situation. So I love when people say, I do a consultation, I go through what the purpose of an inspection is, and that, they're not going to ask for unreasonable things because I've prepped them and educated them on that. That to me goes way further than telling me over and over again how much your client loves the house. So, and then just calling repeatedly for updates. Maybe there's an offer deadline. And I don't know, a lot of offers get submitted, right before a deadline, and just getting too many calls. I think it's a balance when you're in a waiting period with clients to call the listing agent and keep in touch without being overbearing or annoying. Okay. This one's really important, and I feel like I shouldn't have to say it or have a slide for it, but unfortunately we do. I know that there are times where I've been on the buying side and the listing agent, like you mentioned, they're kind of challenging. We've got to keep our emotions between the lines and not respond with frustration in return. Also, it is frustrating when you have, shown your clients and maybe written offers on multiple homes, and you call me and, we've got 7 offers and you're annoyed. I get it. But when you act frustrated and have attitude about it, even if it's not really towards me, it's just showing a little bit of immaturity and lack of emotional control, and just doesn't give me a good impression. And maybe this house your buyers aren't going to get, but maybe the next listing, if I have a really good experience with you, then it's going to help you, long term, than if I just feel like, oh, she kind of got a little tooty with me there. I just think we owe it to our clients to make sure that we're not burning bridges with agents in our communities, and that we're keeping our cool even when things are frustrating. That's just really, really important, no matter which side of the transaction you're on. And just because someone else is acting out doesn't mean that, 2 wrongs don't make a right. So it's not going to help anything if you also act out. Might feel good in the moment to snap back, but it's not going to feel good long term. I've actually won over the years, and have great relationships with people who were actually kind of bitchy, to me at first. And I just try to find a way to kill them with kindness. And, I think when you do that, sometimes they even feel bad. They realize later maybe that they were kind of snooty with you, and they almost, next time you call them on a listing, they kind of feel like they owe you something, because you didn't respond in kind with the attitude. And so just keep that in mind, that this is long-term, hopefully, for all of us to be in this business. And it's usually a small world in real estate, no matter how big your market is. And then not submitting a clean, complete offer. Oh, when I get offers and I'm like, I have to make 3 phone calls to you to find out what you meant, know your contracts. If you're newer, have your broker review them before you submit it or before you send it to your clients to sign. Take your time. If you're using templates, I get that a lot too, where it's like, oh, this is a different address, but the tax ID is mine, and everything else is. So just take your time. Those details really matter. Because if I get an incomplete offer, or something is wrong, it's just challenging, because I'm thinking, is this person going to be able to manage their clients? Is this person going to cause the transaction to blow up because of their lack of experience or lack of attention to detail? And I have to share that with my seller. I did receive this offer. It had these things were incomplete, and I had to call back to the agent, and here's why that concerns me. And I've had sellers decide against even the highest offer because the paperwork was not in order and it just concerned them. They really wanted to make sure that it was solid and going to close. Getting an offer accepted is just part of it, right? We all want to get to the closing table. And so that's just not setting your buyers up for success if you're submitting paperwork that's incomplete or not organized. And then what to do instead. So we talked about what not to do. Let's talk about what to do. So read the listing thoroughly, right? Know the remarks, the exclusions, the offer instructions, and the showing notes before you reach out. That will just speak volumes. It's like my love language. Call with strategic intent. Have a clear, concise purpose and know what you're asking and why, and just don't do the vague fishing thing. And then write the clean and complete offer, fewer contingencies, clear terms, proof of funds, right? And a compelling cover email. Don't send a long email that takes 30 minutes to read, right? Have a summary, have everything clearly laid out. And just make it easy for us to want to work with you. Obviously, it's not my house. I don't get to choose which offer my seller chooses. However, I am providing them with feedback, and my insights in this whole process. So, this client, this buyer, they called and they asked all these questions. I'm a little worried how they're going to be at the inspection. They seem really nervous. You just have to remember how you are behaving with the listing agent is giving impressions to that listing agent, which they're going to share with the seller, about your buyers and how the transaction will go. So be no chaos, no drama, be organized, confident, professional communication. It just goes a long ways. And then strengthen relationships in advance. So build rapport with agents before you need something, because your reputation really does matter in these situations. Again, it's not our house, not our offer to choose. However, it can go a long way. If you have a great reputation in the community, I also will share that with my seller. This is a great agent. I've had other transactions with her, whatever it is. So build relationships with other agents so that when you do have a listing that comes up, you can say, oh, I might have an edge on this one. I've worked with this agent. I have a relationship with them. Sometimes that can make all the difference. And then encourage your buyers to put their best foot forward. Like we talked about, I think the escalation clause is a good discussion, and there's valid use for it. It depends on how competitive it is, though. I always think putting your best foot forward is going to win out in the long run over trying to scrimp your way, through. Provide all proof of funds and any other information to help them shine. So I love when I get, if they're doing a large down payment, send the proof of funds of the down payment. I don't want to have to ask. I know it's not required up front, but wow, you have everything in a beautiful package with a bow on it for the listing agent to present to the seller. Just makes a big difference and just helps you really stand out when they're presenting offers. Have your lender call the listing agent. So we talked about this one before the offer is negotiated to help sell them on the buyer. Let them know that everything's been verified. All these little things do make a difference. And then, do your best to connect with the listing agent. But, even if they're not, you be gracious, you be professional, and you just be you, and don't let how they're being affect how you're being, because that will hurt your buyers. And then if your offer is not accepted, don't get frustrated and annoyed. Ask to be the backup offer. Even if you were like number 4, I've had situations as the listing agent where, number 2 and number 3 found something else, they moved on, and you're next in line. So, and we're seeing, I don't know about you, Debbie, but we are seeing a lot more sale fails in our market. So,
and it's usually over requests for repairs.
Yep.
Could be that agents are not counseling buyers and sellers as they should be, but that's been the number one driver. Someone shared with me the other day that they always submit a backup, and that they've tracked it this year. 1 out of 3 backups got accepted, ultimately got accepted.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good stat. I think in, 2020, 2021, when the market was really hot here, it was very, it didn't happen very often because people were just so lucky to get an offer accepted. They usually stuck it out and figured it out. But now I think that things are a little more volatile and people are scared, and they're scared off a little more easily. And then once your offer is accepted, be a joy to deal with so that they remember you next time. Like I said, we're in this for the long term, and we want to make sure that we're building relationships, being professional. It'll pay dividends over time. So, and that's all I got.
Jacqueline, can you do me a favor and type in the chat box your contact info, right?
Yes.
They want to reach out to you with any questions. Again, she's in the Vancouver market. And this was just her graciously sharing her time with us today. And, a couple of quick things. Steve was saying some listing agents publish offer deadlines, but accept one prior to the deadline. And that could be the agent, or that could be the seller saying, I'm over it. I just want to take this offer. So again, as that buyer agent, you have to counsel your buyers. These are all factors we need to consider and decide when we want to submit this offer. And then Allison said, offers are not confidential unless the agent has signed an agreement not to disclose. Allison, I would just say to everyone in every state, you want to check what are the rules pertaining to as a listing agent. How far can you go in your disclosure without a seller's permission? So I would just say every state is different. You want to check that. And then also you want to make sure that you're doing what's right. If you're the listing agent, is it going to help your seller to disclose or not? And then make sure you're doing it, with permission or legally the correct way. So we really appreciate you all being with us today. If you can reach out to Jacqueline, and she's awesome. If you have a referral for her city, her town, she has an amazing team. They'll do a really good job for you. And if you want to talk about how to take your business to the next level, Here at Forward, we have the reputation of helping people double their business in their first year with us. Just request a strategy call. You and I will talk, and I'll show you how we could do that. But we just so appreciate you being here to learn today. And a copy of this recording is going to automatically come to you. So it will automatically come your way. Mate, if you email me, I think it was Jag Winder. If you email me, Debbie@forwardcoaching.com, and ask me about the scripts, and we'll get you taken care of. All right, guys, have a good rest of your week. I will see you all soon.
Thank you. Bye.